We will now resume the session. May we call on MP Shaikh Abdul Mu'min Mujahid to lead us in prayer.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقال ربكم ادعوني استجب لكم آمين يا الله وآمين يا رب العالمين اللهم إنا نسألك في اجتماعنا هذا اجتماع مرحوما وتفرقنا من بعده تفرقا معصوما ولا تجعل فينا ولا منا ولا معنا شقيا ولا محروما يا أرحم الراحمين إلهنا هذا حالنا لا يخفى عليك وهذا ضعفنا ظاهر بين يديك فعاملنا بالإحسان إذ الفضل والجود والكرم منك وإليك اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى اللهم آت نفوسنا تقواها زكها أنت خير من زكاها أنت وليها ومولاها يا رب العالمين اللهم وفقنا لما فيه صلاحنا وفلاحنا في الدنيا والآخرة ولما فيه صلاح بلادنا وحكومتنا وشعبنا Bangsamoro يا الله يا أرحم الراحمين وصلى الله على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Majority Leader.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Speaker Ali Pangalian Balindong, Honorable Deputy Speaker Attorney Nabil Tan, members of the Bangsamoro Transition Authorities.
With all due respect, let me interject. Resume na po tayo. Nag-resume lang tayo. Kaya
Yes.
wala na roll call, wala na. Nag-resume
Yes,
lang tayo in the previous. Sinuspend lang natin. So, baka magtaka kayo, naghihintay ng
Yes.
national anthem at saka Bangsamoro at roll call. Wala na po.
Sige,
Sige, proceed,
Yes, Mr.
Majority Leader.
Honorable members of the Bangsamoro Transition Authority Parliament, Secretariat, visitors, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Mr. Speaker, we end up on item numbers 4. But before we start, Mr. Speaker, I move to amend the order of business to include one particular parliament bill on first stage. This is BTA Parliament. I move to include in the order of business BTA Parliament Bill number 160. 160.
160.
Yes, in the number 1, Mr. Speaker. To include at the first stage of bill, Mr. Speaker. So I move.
What is the title?
Item number 4. A title, an act upgrading the existing Lamitan District Hospital in the province of Basilan from its present level 1 with 25 bed capacity into a level 2 with 100 bed capacity hospital and appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes.
What is the pleasure of the majority?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, to include it in the order of business on item number 4 per stage of bills, Mr. Speaker.
First stage of bills.
Yes, to include it in the order of business, Mr. Speaker.
It's already included.
Hindi po yan siya kasali sa last session. Kaya i-amend ko yung order of business, Mr. Speaker, to include that one.
Okay. There's a motion to amend the order of business to include Bill number 160, an act upgrading the existing Lamitan District Hospital in the province of Basilan from its present level 1 with 25 bed capacity into a level 2 with 100 bed capacity hospital and appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes. Is there any second? Duly seconded. Is there any objection? What is the pleasure of the gentleman from Sulu?
Thank you,
Brother
Majority
MP Jo
Leader.
Lorena.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While I support and load the intent of the act, but I have some legal issue on the matter, considering that Lamitan Hospital is not within the jurisdiction of the BARM. Because Lamitan Hospital, accordingly, and as testified even with the Ministry of Health of the BARM, has been turned over to the local government units. Therefore, it is under the jurisdiction of the local government units. Now, upgrading a hospital that within our jurisdiction might raise some legal issue. Therefore, the appropriate way is for that hospital to be turned over first to the BARB by the local government units because before we can even allow an upgrading. I support the upgrading because many of the constituency of Lamitan is really BARM. But the legal issue is it was turned over to the local government of Basilan.
Yes.
The manifestation.
Yes, manifestation. It's just a manifestation. It's just a manifestation.
Okay. And manifestation well taken, we will consider that in the coming days.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is a standing motion.
Next.
Yes,
may we
Mr.
ask-
Speaker, we are now. We continue, Mr. Speaker, the last session. We are on item number 4 per stage of bills.
Item.
Number 4 per stage of bills. May we request the Secretary General to read the first proposed Parliament bill, including the author, the title, and the number of the particular Parliament bill, Mr. Speaker.
Item number 4.
Yes, item number 4 stage of bills. Doon po tayo natapos last.
BTA Parliament Bill number 164.
1160. First stage of bill, Mr. Speaker. May we request the Secretary General to read the first Parliament bill for today's session on the first stage of bills.
The Secretary General is directed to read the said bill.
PTA Parliament Bill number 160. An act upgrading the existing Lamitan District Hospital in the province of Basilan from its present level 1 with 25 bed capacity into a level 2 with 100 bed capacity hospital, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes. Principally authored by MP Abdul Mumin A. Mujahid and co-authored by MPs Hatimil E. Hasan, Muslimin A. Jakilan, Alsad T. Satar, Laisa M. Alamia, Faiz S. Alauddin, and Muslima A. Asmawil.
Mr. Speaker, this is a private member bill. Any members of the Parliament who would like to be a co-author, just inform the Secretariat, Mr. Speaker, or fill up the piece of paper that was distributed before this session, Mr. Speaker.
Okay.
There is no action, Mr. Speaker. May we request the Secretary General to read the next BTA Parliament bill, including the number, the title, and the author.
Next, the Secretary General will please read the next.
BTA Parliament Bill number 162. An act establishing a scholarship and return service program for deserving students in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao and appropriating funds therefore. The principal authors are MPs Amil Bahar S. Mawalil and Siti Sahara I. Mastura. The co-authors are MPs Laisa M. Alamia, Baintan A. Ampatuan, Don Mustafa A. Luong, Rasul Y. Mitmug Jr., Suharto M. Ambuludto, Rasul E. Ismail, Abraham T. Burahan, Sahi S. Uja, Ahmad I. Abbas, Eddie M. Ali, Ali B. Sangki, Cesar H. Alil, Maysara D. Latif, Narciso U. Ike, Aida M. Silongan, and Musa K. S. Jamla.
Mr. Speaker, this is a private member bill. Any members of the Parliament who would like to be a co-authors, just inform the Secretary, Mr. Speaker.
The chair would like to associate myself, but will be submitting a written filling up the form. So thank you very much. Please proceed.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, we are now on number 3. May we request the Secretary General to read the next proposed bill, including the title and the author.
Secretary General is directed to read the next bill.
BTA Parliament Bill number 163. An act granting recognition and incentives to Bangsamoro top-notchers, top 1 to top 10 of board, bar, and other national licensure examinations, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes. principally authored by MP Amil Bahar S. Mawalil and co-authored by MPs Liza M. Alamia, Baintan A. Ampatuan, Don Mustafa A. Luong, Rasul Y. Mitmug Jr., Suharto M. Ambuludto, Rasul E. Ismael, Abraham T. Burahan, Eddie M. Ali, Sahi A. S. Uja, Ahmad I. Abbas, Eddie M. Ali B. Sangki, Cesar H. Alil, Maysara D. Latif, Narciso U. Ike, Aida M. Silongan, Musa K. S. Jamla, and Siti Sahara I. Mastura.
Mr. Speaker, again, this is a private member bill. Any members of the parliament would like to be signify their interest to be co-authors, just inform the secretary or the people that was submitted before this.
Okay, those interested may just fill up the form so we cut on time.
Yes, may we again request the secretary to read the next proposed bill on this matter.
Secretary General is directed to read the next proposed BTA bill number and the title to
BTA
include the
Parliament,
author.
BTA Parliament Bill Number 164, an act providing for a microfinancing program for micro and small-scale enterprises within the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, providing funds therefore and for other purposes. Principally authored by MP Amil Bahar S. Mawalil and co-authored by MPs Liza M. Alamia, Baintan A. Ampatuan, Don Mustafa A. Loong, Rasul Y. Mitmug Jr., Suharto M. Ambuludto, Rasul E. Ismael, Abraham T. Burahan, Eddie M. Ali, Sahi S. Uja, Ahmad I. Abbas, Ali B. Sangki, Cesar H. Alil, Maysara D. Latif, Narciso C. Uike, Aida M. Silongan, Musa K. S. Jamla, and Siti Sahara I. Mastura.
Again, Mr. Speaker, this is a private member bill. Any members of the parliament would like to be a co-author, just inform the secretariat or fill the form that was submitted before this session, Mr. Speaker.
Those interested and the chair would like to manifest if the principal author will so accept as co-author of this bill. I will also fill up the form. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, we proceed to item number 5, second stage of bills. May we respectfully recognize MP Maysara Latif to read her sponsorship speech on BTA Parliament Bill number 71, entitled An Act Institutionalizing Support to the Welfare and Care for Orphans by establishing Bangsamoro Orphanage in the region and providing funds therefore, Mr. Speaker. May we respectfully recognize MP
The
Maysara.
Honorable MP Maysara Damdamun Latif is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Members of the Parliament and distinguished colleagues, today I have the honor to seek approval of proposed Bill number 71 entitled An Act Institutionalizing Support to the Welfare and Care for Orphans by establishing Bangsamoro orphanages in the region and providing funds thereof. Filed on November 9, 2020. I'm standing here today, Mr. Speaker, as a member of the Parliament and a mother, a Moro, and an advocate for children's rights with an immense concern for the well-being of our future generation. It is stated that in Islam, an orphan is the child or the minor who, by the will of Allah, has no parents or has just one parent. In Islam, the absence of a father, either by death or abandonment or any other reason, results in the child becoming an orphan. The child remains an orphan until he or she reaches the age of maturity or puberty. Because orphans are minors, they're physically weak, they're also at a disadvantage and often suffer from poverty. Many are children of Zahid or martyrs in the service of the Moro revolutionary fronts. For a child who has lost a parent, life is filled with so much hardships. In the absence of early child and development support, the orphan child is one of the most vulnerable to poverty, to radicalization, and criminality. Some orphan children are blessed by being adopted by their relatives, but some are not provided with enough care. Meanwhile, there are those who were supported by institutions. However, in truth, only few are accommodated due to limited resources. The sad reality is that if foster parents, social workers, or institutions are not there to provide what they need, no one can or will. This is the time for the Bangsamoro government to step up. Under the principle of parens patriae, the government should stand in as the parents and caregivers of the orphan child. As the new Bangsamoro government raises, we believe that every sector should have the opportunity to be heard. Orphans are amongst the most vulnerable sector. On top of that, they do not have sufficient budget, programs, projects, and policies afforded to them. According to the research study by the Asia Foundation in 2020, entitled Children of War, there are currently no Department of Social Welfare and Development or MSSD accredited orphanages or shelters in the Bangsamoro region. Some reason is that they did not meet the minimum requirements given to them. That's why many Muslim orphans are sent to orphanages outside Bangsamoro, even in Manila. Moreover, respondents across the region noted that being unattended, ignored, and unloved leaves the orphans vulnerable to radicalization and co-option by violent extremist groups. Without proper assessment and processing of their emotions, the orphans may grow up believing that resolving issues through violence is normal. Mr. Speaker and members of the Parliament, the bill seeks to institutionalize support for the welfare and care of orphans in the Bangsamoro region by establishing a system of accredited Bangsamoro orphanages within each province through the region, which will help them alleviate the condition of every orphan and provide them with opportunity to live a full life. Moreover, it seeks to create a system that will determine the qualified beneficiaries and monitor and evaluate their proper provision. It has been months, Mr. Chair, Mr. Speaker, of efforts from our office to come up with this bill. Our office conducted series of care for orphans public consultations in aid of legislation in the whole region in partnership with the Asia Foundation. Our first was held in Lanao in March 20, in Maguindanao and Cotabato in May 31, 2021, in the provinces of Basilan, Sulu, and Tawi-Tawi in the months of June and July 2021. This consultation focused on various issues and concerns of orphans, as well as stakeholders who took care of them, and participated in by various sectors, stakeholders, individuals, institutions, offices, ministries, and various organizations. They provided inputs and recommendations addressed to the Bangsamoro government and to our proposed BTA Parliament Bill 71, where the participants gave their comments, recommendations for the improvement of the bill. Our participants are the many stakeholders who also signed the manifesto of support for the immediate passage of this bill. Some of the major issues and concerns that were raised is that no concrete data about orphans in the region is available. There are also so many challenges with respect to the subpar standard of centers like Toril and madrasa caring institutions. There's also limited financial support and assistance to them, including home-based, center-based, and displaced orphans. There's also lack of access to education and health services, lack of support and supervision among the orphans in the home-based and center-based institutions like Toril learning schools and madrasa. They are vulnerable to recruitment and radicalization and issues on security, peace, and justice, and prone to abuse. Mr. Chair, I now highlight that the main points of the proposed bill are as follows. Creating a system that will lead to the creation of a credible mechanism to provide eligible beneficiaries and appropriate model for orphanages in the respective community. It will also create a comprehensive monitoring system that will address the needs of orphan minors in their community. shall include but not limit to the following: updated data on the number of orphans, their location, and their personal profile in their communities. It shall develop appropriate models of orphanages in their respective community appropriate to their culture and context, and they shall be monitored regularly. The bill also seeks to develop a comprehensive support program that will be institutionalized by the MSSD as a mechanism to provide social welfare and care for orphans. The program shall include basic needs, physical safety, physical security, socioeconomic needs, educational needs, emotional and spiritual needs, and access to justice. This bill includes constituent LGUs in the Bangsamoro region that shall be mandated to develop their own monitoring and evaluating system for orphanages found within their jurisdiction. There shall be a managing committee also, Mr. Chair. To pass these bills means to implement the mandate of the BOL, Mr. Chair, under Section 14, Article 9 of the said law. Building orphanage centers or Baitul Yatim will help alleviate the condition of every orphan. Mr. Chair, as per the hadith of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in Sahih al-Bukhari, I and the caretaker of the orphans will enter paradise together like this, raising his forefinger and middle finger jointly, leaving no space in between. When we help them, the orphan, raised in healthy and loving environment, they grew up to be responsible individual, and there will be less crime, less deprived children, and less out-of-school children. Our children's future is worth every sacrifice. By helping them, we are helping our future. It is for these reasons, Mr. Speaker, that the early approval of this bill is earnestly sought. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move to refer this to the Committee on Social Services and Development and the Committee on Finance, Budget and Management, Mr. Speaker.
There is a motion to refer this to Committee on Social Services and Finance.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Duly seconded. Is there any objection? Chair hears none. Same is hereby approved.
Mr. Speaker, before we proceed to the business of the day, we first settle the issue on item number 3, proposed resolution number 569, entitled Resolution Respectfully Appealing to His Excellency President Rodrigo Roa Duterte to veto Senate Bill number 1373 and House Bill number 9943, or the Act prohibiting and declaring child marriage as illegal. The parliamentary status of this, Mr. Speaker, are there two pending motions. One motion is to treat this as simple resolution, and the other is to refer to the appropriate committee, Mr. Speaker.
So what is the pleasure of the Majority Leader?
Yes, I still believe, Mr. Speaker, that this bill should be treated as simple resolution so that we can decide as whole, this parliament, on what to do on this particular resolution. We can amend this resolution on whatever title or whatever may be the contents of the body. We can decide at the matter if we repair this to the committee, to the business for the day, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, may we hear the gentleman from Lanao Sur, the Honorable Deputy Majority Leader?
Not the
By
deputy,
Salintago.
not the deputy speaker. I thought you are talking about the future congressman of Lanao del Sur, the deputy speaker. From Lanao del Sur also. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. What is before us today, Mr. Speaker, is a resolution to veto a particular bill by the President. There is last session, there is discussion on this, whether to refer this to a committee or to treat this as simple resolution because of its urgency. It is in order not to drag the discussion, Mr. Speaker, we have to determine first what will be the status of the bill in the House of Congress. If it is already passed in the House of Congress, there is an urgency for that bill, and we can treat it as simple resolution. kung hindi pa tapos naman sa Congress, because the concern of our colleagues is to discuss this in the committee thoroughly, we can refer this in the committee. That's my suggestion, so that we cannot discuss it thoroughly. So ang tanong ko lang, Mr. Speaker, to the majority floor leader and to others who sponsor this, especially Minister Hamid Bara, kung tapos na po yung bill na yan sa Kongreso, na for signature na ng President. Kung for signature ng President, dapat mayroon na tayong posisyon dito sa Parliament.
So
Mr. Speaker, with that matter, Mr. Speaker, since the principal author was not present last session, Mr. Speaker, may we respectfully recognize MP Hamid Bara, Mr. Speaker, to shed lights about this proposed
The
resolution.
Honorable MP Hamid Bara is recognized. May we know what is the status of this bill in Congress, both houses?
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Majority Leader, the bills in the Senate and in the Congress, Senate Bill number 1373 and House Bill number 9943 are in the hands of the Office of the President for approval. And therefore, this is the reason why we passed the resolution, because the passage of the bill of criminalizing child marriage will be detrimental and affront to the Islamic law on marriage.
Before you proceed, the honorable gentleman, may we know where did you get the info? Is that officially transmitted to us here? Did you personally follow that up in Congress?
Yes, Your Honor. It is passed in the Office of the President.
Ano, no? What is the answer? Yes. Yes, you have personal knowledge.
I have asked my legal consultant to do so, and in fact, he's the one who drafted it, and he personally told me that the bill is in the Office of the President.
Kailangan kasi may official communication tayo. From that, we cannot just ask information. Kasi we will be interfering with the actions of Congress. And that's a very serious issue. But if we have to interfere, we should be armed with personal knowledge and information, not just any information. So, what is you may proceed, the Honorable Gentleman Hamid Bara, Minister Hamid.
As I've said, the reason for filing the resolution is because this is an affront to the practice of the Muslims on marriage. Criminalizing child marriage and limiting the age to 18 is against not only Islamic law but also the Code of Muslim Personal Laws, and it goes against the institution of the family as the basic social institution. Criminalizing a father for facilitating a marriage will destroy the spirit of the family. That is both
Thank you, Minister Hamid.
safeguarded by the Constitution and by Islamic law.
Thank you, Minister Hamid. We are just asking for the status of the bill. So he has information from his legal consultant. Majority Leader, we're not yet into the substance as to the discussion. Majority
Yes, Mr.
Leader.
Speaker.
Thank you, Minister Hamid.
Mr. Speaker,
Yes.
Mr.
MP. But before the Zoom, Mr. Speaker, MP Zia Alonto.
The Deputy Speaker was raising his hands many times already.
Yes,
May
Mr.
we
Speaker.
give the courtesy to the Honorable Deputy Speaker and for a future Congressman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my point is on the procedural issue of this particular resolution and not really on the substantive issue, because we are to decide whether we continue this discussion under the order of business or we should refer this to the committee. What I know, Mr. Speaker, just a rejoinder to what the good gentleman from Lanao, the good minister of MHSD, said earlier. What I know for a fact, because I saw the official page of Miguel Subiri, and he in fact informed the public that the version of increasing the age for child marriage, which is, I think, around 12 to 14, it now becomes 16. So it has already been approved in the Senate. As to the lower house version, that is still yet to be informed. No? We have yet to be informed about the status in the lower house. But as to the Senate, it has already been approved. But then again, Mr. Speaker, we are to decide on the procedure matter. I believe it's time that we decide whether we refer this or treat this as simple resolution or refer this to the committee so that we can, if so we decide, we can continue the discussion, no? Or not, sa committee na lang, Mr. Speaker, para
Yes, thank
para
you.
ma-shorten po yung
Thank you,
process.
Mr. Deputy Speaker. I will recognize first the Minority Floor Leader, then followed by MP Maysara. The Honorable Minority Floor Leader, Attorney Liza Lamia, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Majority Floor Leader. I hope I can be heard. Mr. Speaker, I will not go into the substance itself of the resolution, but I refer, and I strongly suggest, Mr. Speaker, because we need to level a status on whether
Napuputol ka, Minority Floor Leader. Oh, wala na naririnig. Wala na po kayo marinig dito. MP Liza, wala po naririnig dito. Saan problema? Sa atin, sa kanya. Wala po marinig kay MP Liza. Balikan na lang natin kung pwede.
Mr. Speaker, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes,
Kanina
just very
wala
short.
ka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pasensya na. Mahina po talaga ang network dito. Mr. Speaker, just very short. I will not go into the substance of the resolution, but considering that we are not leveled off officially as to the status of the resolution of the bill, whether it is at the office of the President or at the Senate or at the lower house, I think this should be threshed out and referred to the committee level, Mr. Speaker. And so while we continue the interpellation, I would like to move now that this resolution be referred to the committee level, Mr. Speaker, for further discussion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minority Floor Leader. May we hear first, there's a pending motion, but we will hear first MP Maysara Latif.
Mr.
You're
Chair,
recognized.
Mr. Speaker, during the last session, I was one of those who objected to the...
Lakasan mo, MP Maysara, hindi ko maintindihan.
I was one of those who objected that it will be treated as a simple resolution, Mr. Speaker, considering that the resolution pertains to an issue that should have been referred to the Bangsamoro Parliament Congress Forum. The reason why, Mr. Speaker, is that this bill is not new. Na-discuss po siya exhaustively by the Congress and Senate. Siguro 1 whole year yata ito, dinidiscuss. So when we heard, siguro the proponent, the author of this bill, resolution, should have intervened at the earliest possible opportunity, Mr. Speaker, in courtesy of the plenary powers of the Congress and Senate. Remember, they are they have, the institution itself should be respected the same way that they respect our competencies, our powers, our authorities, our jurisdiction. So kung ngayon lang tayo nag-raise ng alarm, we did not exhaust the administrative remedies that was afforded to us in the IGR at the very first instance, we might seem to be acting in bad faith, Mr. Speaker. And why is that? First, they will ask, why did the Bangsamoro Parliament not file a position paper through the IGR in the Bangsamoro Parliament, Bangsamoro Parliament and Congress Forum? Nung dinidiscuss pa lang namin to sa Senate at sa Congress, no? It's not, should not be a cause for us to disrespect our, hindi siya co-equal pa, Mr. Chair, because it's higher, it's national. Higher body with appropriate plenary power to decide on a matter that is within their competency. In this case, Mr. Chair, the more than 200 members of the lower house and the more than 24 members of the Senate made a decision for the passage of the law in question. Isn't it unusual for this body to contest a law that has long been deliberated upon exhaustively and not in the first instant that this issue arose for us to be able to question it through they afforded us, Mr. Chair, an IGR mechanism in case of conflicts of laws, the Philippine Congress Bangsamoro Forum. So why was there no effort on this parliament to do that? That is my number one question. Second question.
What is the number one question?
My number one question, Mr. Chair, is that we will be seen as discourteous, Mr. Chair, because there was an opportunity at the earliest possible...
Discourtesy
Yes,
is the
Mr.
point.
Chair, because there is an opportunity, a legal, a formal mechanism that was afforded to the Bangsamoro Parliament via the IGR mechanism of Bangsamoro Parliament Philippine Congress Forum to protest, to amend the law, the bills in question. Unfortunately, we, by estopel, Mr. Chair, that opportunity was already passed. Umandar na po yung barko, nung dumungko na po siya, nasa port na siya, sabi natin, huwag kayong bumaba. Mali po sa aking palagay yon.
Mr. Speaker.
Pangatlo, Mr. Speaker.
Tapusin mo na lang natin to.
Mr.
Manifestation lang to, may motion pending.
Yes, Mr.
Yes,
Speaker.
Mr. Speaker. For me, as a member of this...
What is the
Parliament.
position of the Honorable MP Maysara?
My position,
Please wind up.
Mr. Chair, is that the ship has already sailed. And we cannot undo what has been done. We should have, at the very first opportunity, invoke our rights under the Bangsamoro Parliament Congress Forum.
Yes.
And not doing so, we are estopped, Mr. Chair. Because if we do this, it would appear that we are interfering with the Congress, Senate, and the Philippines relationship, which we should not do, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
Ms. Majority Leader,
Yes, Mr.
that
Speaker,
there's an
to-
expression of
Yes,
manifestation.
Mr. Speaker.
And
Mr.
I think
Speaker, Mr. Speaker, that there is a bicameral report. Yes, Mr.
Conference
Speaker, a
report.
report that was
Bicameral
finalized
Conference
by the
Committee
House of
report.
Representatives and Senate on September 27, 2021, and therefore this bill has already reached the office of the President for signature. In that case, Mr. Speaker,
did I get you right? There is a conference.
bicameral conference report,
So,
Mr.
hindi pa
Speaker,
tapos.
to consolidate the two bill, Mr.
So
Speaker.
hindi pa tapos. May bycam pa.
Hindi, tapos na po ba, nung September 27, 2021, tapos na po yung
Bicameral
BICAM.
Conference Committee report
Yes.
is for deliberation at the Bicameral Conference Committee.
Hindi, tapos na po yun, Mr. Speaker, na tapos na sila nung September 27, 2021, Mr. Speaker. So, hindi na po tayo magugulat. One of these days, Mr. Speaker, dalawa lang yan. It's either na-lapse into law or pipirmahan ng Presidente, Mr. Speaker. Kaya po, napaka-urgent po itong batas na ito, Mr. Speaker. And with due respect kay MP Maysara Latif, Mr. Speaker, hindi po pwedeng gamitin yung intergovernmental relations mechanism, Mr. Speaker, dahil alam po natin na hindi pa po tayo nag-convene. And pangalawa, there is no evidence na na-consult yung Bangsamoro government with respect to this particular bills, Mr.
Let me
Speaker.
add to that, Majority
Yes,
Leader.
Mr.
The
Speaker. I
ICR
insist, Mr. Speaker, to hear the voice of the ulamas inside this plenary hall, Mr. Speaker, para po sila po ang makapagsalita. Marami po tayo magagaling na mga ulama dito, Mr. Speaker. Pagbigyan po sila makapagsalita, Mr. Speaker. At
Mr. Speaker.
In that case, Mr. Speaker, I move for the decision of the House, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.
there is a motion to divide the House.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
Mahaba na pa deliberation. Last meeting pa to.
Last
session.
session lang. Mr. Speaker,
What is the pleasure of the Honorable Deputy Speaker Omar Sema?
Mr. Chair, I intend to second the motion of the majority floor leader.
To divide the House.
Yes, to divide the House.
There's a motion to divide the House.
Mr. Speaker, before you rule on the motion,
Objection, Mr. Speaker.
something.
Mr. Speaker.
As to per your manifestation a while ago, whether or not there was a personal information, whether the bill is already or the approved law is already in the office of the president. I think with due respect,
Approved bill.
yeah, with due respect, Mr. Speaker, the eventual consequence of any law passed by Congress is always to submit it to the president for his signature. Therefore, the issue whether or not the proponent of this bill has personal knowledge as to whether the bill or the law is already in Congress is irrelevant, Mr. Speaker. Nonetheless, Mr. Speaker,
that is very relevant, Deputy Speaker.
yeah,
Because we don't discuss here what your information has.
yeah,
The information should be officially transmitted to us.
yeah, that is correct, Mr. Speaker. Nonetheless, Mr. Speaker, there is also I also join the manifestation of the majority floor leader that there is no evidence whether or not the Bangsamoro government has been consulted on the two question bills, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I second the motion of the majority floor leader to divide the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Let us now proceed with the motion of MP Liza, duly seconded, to divide the House. Those who are in favor, say
Objection, Mr. Speaker. Objection. Point of order.
sino yun?
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Is that the minority leader?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. There was a pending motion, Mr. Speaker, before the motion of the majority floor leader. And
That was your motion, di ba?
my motion was to refer the resolution to the committee level, Mr. Speaker, to level
Mr.
of.
Speaker, on the last session, Mr. Speaker, I have a motion to treat this as simple resolution. And therefore, MP Maysara Latif and MP Buluto move for referral of the committee on the preparer of the resolution in appropriate committee. There were two motions, Mr. Speaker. In that case, it's conflicting resolution. In that case, Mr. Speaker, the only move to settle the issue is to divide the House, Mr. Speaker.
There's a motion. There was a motion. Maybe we deal first with the motion. Tama naman yun. The motion of MP Liza is to refer that to the committee. And then meron din another motion. Ano yung is another motion?
Mr. Speaker, may I? Yes, I was
Majority
the.
leader muna. Majority leader muna. With all due respect, Deputy Speaker.
There are two motions, Mr. Speaker. The first motion that was moved last session, Mr. Speaker, is to treat this as simple resolution.
Sino nag-motion nun?
Ako po yung Mr. Speaker. So, meron ding motion, yung ibang MPs natin, na i-refer ito sa appropriate committee. So, meron dalawang conflicting motion, Mr. Speaker. Kaya po nagka-debate tayo dito, Mr. Speaker, at umabot sa ganitong panahon kasi hindi po tayo magkasundo. And the only way to settle this issue, Mr. Speaker, is to divide the House, Mr. Speaker. So, yun po yun, Mr. Speaker.
We will proceed to divide the House. Deputy Majority.
Yes,
Floor Leader, MP
clarification ko lang with the indulgence of everybody. Ano pang pagbutuhan natin? Kasi baka ibang mabuto ko. Ang pagbutuhan natin, Mr. Speaker, be clarified. Ang pagbutuhan natin, Mr. Speaker, whether to treat this as simple resolution or we refer this to the committee. Is that what we are going to vote?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, on the procedure, Mr.
The
Chair.
Deputy Speaker,
Yes.
last na yan.
Yes, in response to the
We will roll on this.
in response to the clarification of MP Tagu, I believe the first motion that was moved should be the basis of the voting. Meaning, the motion that was raised is to treat this as simple resolution. Those who are, so I mean, say, if you are not in favor of that, automatically the implication is that you want to refer that to the committee. So the motion would be in favor to treat or opposed to treat a simple resolution. Mr. Speaker.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
that's
Mr. Speaker,
very
before we proceed, Mr. Speaker, may we respectfully recognize MP Iqbal. Yes, Mr. Speaker.
before I recognize our brother MP Iqbal, ang motion, pinaliwanag ng Majority Floor Leader, is to treat this as a simple resolution. Yung mga salita kanina, manifestation, are all manifestations for or against. So balik tayo sa motion ni Majority Floor Leader to move for the division of the House kasi sa kanyang ang bobotohan natin na treat this as a simple resolution. But before we proceed to vote on this as a simple resolution, may I recognize MP Mohajir Iqbal, Minister. MP Minister, you are recognized.
Yes, maraming salamat po, Mr. Speaker. Gusto ko lang iwanagin. I hope na tama po ang...
Hindi po maintindihan. Teka muna, maingay doon, mahina dito. So hindi ko maintindihan ang sinasabi. Hindi, okay. Pero mahina pati audio ni Minister Iqbal.
Sandali lang sandali.
Can you try again, MP, Minister?
Maraming salamat po sa pagbigay niyo po sa akin ng isang pagkakataon para po maihayag po yung isang manifestation. It's very simple po. Ang akin pong pananaw, I hope I am correct, that the issue of that bill related to child marriage cannot be taken up in the IGR bodies because what is supposed to be discussed at the level of the IGR bodies are those that are related to the Bangsamoro Organic Law. And I think that is already outside the Bangsamoro Organic Law. Kaya po hindi po namin ma-discuss. Siguro the most appropriate na body, yung Bangsamoro Parliament Congress Forum po. Dapat po yun po ang mag-discuss dyan. At kaya lang naman, of course, on the side of the Bangsamoro government or parliament, marami po tayong efforts to connect with our counterparts in the lower house and in the upper house, but mukhang hindi masyado maganda ang resulta. As tungkol naman doon po sa sinasabi ni MP na Sara Latif, ito po pinaka-importante ito kasi ang pinag-usapan ito tungkol sa religion po natin ng Islam. We cannot be respectful kung kahit may we bring up issue to Congress, to the President, we cannot be disrespectful po. Ang importante lang dito, ayusin po natin kung paano po natin ma-engage sila. Kasi ito ay importante sa atin. We cannot just fold our hands and then close our mouths. Kailangan we have to speak up. Mabuti kung ang implication or application itong batas na ito, 1 taon lang, 2 taon lang, 10 taon. Pero pag hindi po ito na bagong batas na ito, habang buhay ito, batas na umiiral dito sa bansa natin. Kaya importante po magsalita po tayo. Maraming salamat po.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Medyo hindi klaro sa akin na. Naintindihan ko lang yung IGR. Pero yung isang puntos na pagkakaalam ko, Congress, the lower house has not yet organized their team for the Philippine Congress Bangsamoro Forum. Yan ang last na laman ko. Ewan ko kung naka-organize na sila ngayon. So, paliwanag mo nga sa akin, Majority Leader, malabo pag dinig ko.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Anong sinabi ni Minister Iqbal?
Minister Iqbal said that the first, yung Bangsamoro Philippine Congress Forum ay hindi pa ho na-organize. Meron pa pong
Hindi pa
problema.
na-
Organize po, hindi pa na-convene. Meron pa pong problema. Pangalawa po, sinabi ni MP Iqbal na yung IGR, ang isang principal purpose niya
The
is
main body.
related doon sa Bangsamoro Organic Law, no? Yung IGR sa Organic Law. But this time ito ay national law, itong batas na ito, at affected dito ang Bangsamoro. So kailangan magsalita ang Bangsamoro dito. Pangatlo daw point ni Sir Iqbal, Mr. Chair, is kung kahit batas ito at hindi naka-action ng BTA Parliament, kung ito ay may kinalaman na sa religion na as Islam, Mr. Speaker, ay kailangan marinig ang boses ng Bangsamoro. Kasi involved na po dito ang Islam as a religion.
So hindi disrespect sa Congress dahil it affects.
Hindi disrespect sa Congress, Mr. Speaker. Kailangan lang natin marinig nila ang boses natin dito. Kasi ito ay natatouch na po yung ating religion sa usaping ito, Mr. Speaker. Yun po ang sumatotal na sinabi po ni Minister.
Thank you very much for explaining. Wala po pandinig ko eh. Sino yan?
Mr. Speaker,
Yung birthday celebrant, classmate mo.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, since
The MP Deputy Minority Floor Leader is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, since the majority floor leader has already moved the motion to divide the House, as I know on our rules, Mr. Speaker, we only do nominal voting when it's third reading of a bill. And if it's not third reading of the bill, we simply do yeas and nays so that it will be easy for everybody.
So anong gagawin?
I believe, Mr. Speaker, for this purpose, simple yeas and nays of the plenary is appropriate, Mr. Speaker.
The what?
The yeas and nays, Mr. Speaker.
The yeas and nays.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
How about the Zoom, Mr. Speaker? How can we...
Ang alam ko sa parliamentary rules, pag voting na hindi na-interfere, masyado tayo lenient. Magbo-voting na tayo, marami pa tayo nire-recognize. Under parliamentary rules, pag magbo-voting na, wala nang interference.
We proceed, Mr. Speaker.
MP Jamil Macaraya, would you like to say something about this or are you voting in favor?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would just like to manifest, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me, Mr. Chair? It's just a manifestation, Mr. Chair.
Yes, last manifestation na yan.
Yes,
sige,
Mr.
Jamil, make it short.
Yes,
Mr.
thank you,
Speaker.
Mr. Chair. Since the bill in the Congress is not yet put into law because it is not yet approved by the President, and the very purpose of this resolution is just to bring our concern to the Philippine government through the office of the President so that our concern will be heard, Mr. Chair. So,
MP Jamil.
yes,
Noted.
Mr. Chair.
Noted,
Yes,
noted.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I move for division of the House
There
by
is now,
Viva Voce, Mr. Speaker. Since the Zoom ay hindi po sila makapagsalita, Mr. Speaker, dahil Zoom nga sila.
there's a motion,
By raising the hands na lang, Mr. Speaker, para mabilis tayo.
there's a motion to do it.
Modify Viva Voce, Mr. Speaker.
Viva voce ba?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. By raising of the hands, Mr. Speaker.
Raising of the hands. Those in favor of treating this as simple resolution, raise your hands, including in the Zoom. Nabilang na ba? Yung nasa Zoom na bilang na. Yung nasa Zoom na bilang na.
Okay.
Yung nasa Zoom na bilang na.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
But may I know the result outcome?
Na, okay, okay na. Okay.
Those who are opposed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yung sino naman yung po yung mag-oppose dun sa as treatment, as to treat this as simple resolution, Mr. Speaker, para yes. Those who oppose,
Magboboto uli.
those who oppose, Mr. Speaker, kailangan din sila.
Those who are against?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Nakuha na ba yung boto ng who are in favor? Sandali lang. Mabagal magbilang. Parang pumilik ito.
Mr. Speaker, may we request the votes of those in the Zoom by just raising their hands?
To raise this, those in favor of treating this as a simple resolution, mga nasa Zoom, please raise your hands. Right or left, pwede, basta hands. Kailangan daw may mukha.
Mr. Speaker, bawal pumunta yung hindi makikita yung kanyang mukha. Ipakita yung mukha para ma-identify talaga.
I trust
Thank you,
them.
Mr. Speaker.
MP Sultan Rimbang. I fully trust the MPs. Although good ang suggestion mo. Oh, nakaboto, nabilang na boto nila. Bilisan na natin. In favor or against? Okay na? Tatawagin naman natin those who are against treating this as simple resolution. Please raise your hands. Yung gusto i-repair sa committee. Please raise your hands. O, bilangin nyo, nakataas na sila. Yung nasa Zoom, please raise your hands. Those who are against the motion to treat this as simple resolution. That means you want it referred to the committee.
Soy, charge, soy. Charger yan. Hindi nada.
Nabilang na?
Unsa?
The Secretary General will please announce the outcome of the voting. Those who are in favor of treating this as a simple resolution, yung yes muna.
Mr. Speaker, with total vote of 41 in favor of yes votes and with 11 votes in favor of no. So we have
The yes vote.
have
Yes.
it, Mr. Speaker.
The yes vote have it. So it will now be treated as a simple resolution.
And be transferred for the business of the
Majority Floor Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the session for 15 minutes for Asta prayer, Mr. Speaker.
The session is suspended for 20 minutes for Asar prayer. Session resume. May I ask, the suspension was for 20 minutes, been more than 20 minutes, and we have a mother committee finance meeting at 4. So may I ask the Deputy Majority Leader, Faisalin Tago, to please stand at the rostrum in behalf of the Majority Leader to continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next in our order of business for today is, Mr. Speaker, is business for the day. And the first in the business for the day is proposed resolution number 570. 570.
570. Is
Yes.
that
Proposed resolution encouraging the government of the day to adopt the people's budget on the Bangsamoro Halal ecosystem program for the Bangsamoro Halal development and promotion program, which is principally authored by MPs Russell Mitmuk, Laisa Alamia, Suarto Ambulutu, Baintan Lampatuan, Mustafa Long, Russell Ismail, and Namil Mawala. May I request anyone from the principal author to deliver the sponsorship message for resolution number 570.
MP Ras, would you be willing to stand for the sponsorship, or whoever wishes? Engineer Baintan ba? Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Mr. Speaker, notable colleagues in this parliament, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. I have the honor to present on the floor the proposed resolution number 570, encouraging the government of the day to adopt the people's budget on the Bangsamoro Halal ecosystem program for the Bangsamoro Halal development and promotion program. Section 30, Article 13 of the Organic Law states that the Parliament shall enact laws to further strengthen its policy and programs on halal development. Section 40, Article 12 of the same law asserts that the Bangsamoro government adopts a full disclosure of its budget and shall provide protocols for the guidance of local authorities in the implementation of said policy, which shall include the participation of the representatives from the civil society in the budget process. Mr. Speaker, this resolution is to support a popular initiative, which means that it is proposed directly by the people as part of the participatory democracy in the Bangsamoro region. Section 3I of the Bangsamoro Administrative Code maintains that the Bangsamoro government shall encourage the participation of non-governmental, community-based, and sectoral organizations in government affairs that promote the welfare of the region and its people. The vision of this legislative measure, Mr. Speaker, is for the BARM to lead a competitive, integrated, and sustainable halal ecosystem that is accessible to all Filipinos and the world. We foresee that if this vision is attained, significant impacts will be achieved such as improved income generation from halal activities, better physical access to quality halal products and services, critical mass of halal business and producers, preference for halal products in community or social development programs, increased local market demand for halal products, and improved governance on halal development. The minority bloc of this parliament initiated the people's budget to secure a broad-based engagement with the local communities on the fiscal budget determination for the fiscal year 2022. The minority bloc conducted a series of consultations with local stakeholders across the Bangsamoro region on the halal ecosystem through the months of June to October of this year. The identified participants of these public consultations were those that have primary exposure in the core topics of halal, civil society organizations, social enterprises that are involved in agriculture, fishery, trading, livelihood, production and logistics, services, and financing. The initiative has served a platform for the local communities in identifying their aspirations, the challenges they have confronted with, their perspectives on how to achieve their goals, their needs, and their proposals. Mr. Speaker, the local communities are equivocal in their position that the only way to achieve a halal-driven economy and development is if the programs on halal by the regional government is approached in a multifaceted, multidisciplinary, and interministerial manner, reflecting the various stages of the supply and value chains, from farming and manufacturing production to logistics and distribution, trade and market, consumption, and the institutional leverage required to make halal work. In short, halal development shall be treated as an ecosystem. Each element reinforces the other. The People's Budget proposes a program that establishes the foundational structure of a halal ecosystem in the Bangsamoro region. The local communities have identified 7 sub-programs for moving the halal ecosystem forward on the path of sustainable and culturally relevant economic growth and development. Each sub-program is designed to improve the productivity of actors, mostly the ordinary people, at each stage of the value and supply chains by addressing the most pressing challenges faced by the local communities and by making good use of the emerging opportunities. True to the intent of the People's Budget, these 7 sub-programs are named using the languages of the Bangsamoro to reflect the aspiration of residents to jumpstart the halal ecosystem. 1. Gadungan Sub-Program, or Modernizing Halal Agriculture and Fishery Production. 2. Pagpatawod sin Industriya Sub-Program, Halal Participatory Production, Innovation, and Enterprise Development in Food and Non-Food Manufacturing. 3. Sugpat Kaluman Sub-Program, Improving Halal Trade and Logistics. 4. Ganap Pagguro Sub-Program, Support to Halal Specialization. 5. Tabang sa Ingad Sub-Program, Halal Social Inclusion. 7 or 6, Namagayon Halal Governance Sub-Program, or Strengthening the Halal Governance and Policies. And 7 is Pagpahap Kahalan Sub-Program, Consumer Behavioral Change for Halal Development. The People's Budget offers a menu of 50 projects, which comprises the 7 sub-programs. They are collectively called the Bangsamoro Halal Ecosystem Program. Each project or sub-program can stand on its own, but the local communities and the regional government will reap the tremendous effect and societal benefits conferred by the Halal if all the initiatives under the program will be implemented. They are implementable within the fiscal year and can be sustained in the ensuing years. The government of the day's adoption of the people's budget that is transparent and contextualized to the needs of the Halal stakeholders will only strengthen its Halal roadmap and programs. Having a Halal ecosystem plan and program in the Bangsamoro region will be a definitive and practical anchor on the ways of the life of the ordinary Moros in the BARM. May I therefore request my colleagues in this August chamber to join us in approving this measure. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and my dear colleagues. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Engineer Baintan. What is the pleasure of the majority?
Yes, before that, Mr. Speaker, the sponsorship speech of MP Ampatuan be part of the record of this.
No?
Be made part of the record of this session proceedings. Mr. Speaker, may I move, Mr. Speaker, that we open? Yes.
There is a motion to...
I move, Mr. Speaker, that we open the period of interpellation and debate, Mr. Speaker. And in that regard, so Mr. Speaker, may I call on Deputy Speaker Sia or Rahman along to add to interpellate the main sponsor, Mr. Speaker.
Nandiyan na si Madjo. The Deputy Speaker, Zia Adyong, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I be privileged to ask few questions, clarificatory questions from the main proponent, Mr. Speaker?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I ask my question, I'd like to commend the authors of this resolution, specifically mentioned in the resolution, the minority bloc, for initiating this kind of process, for engaging the stakeholders so that the budget cycle would anyway be also owned and be resembled with the owned by the people. I'd just like to clarify, Mr. Speaker, that it is timely that we are actually under the deliberation, committee deliberation of our budget. May I ask a simple question? Mr. Speaker, these programs that were mentioned under this resolution, are these programs already existing or are these programs a result of their consultation?
Mr. Speaker, the programs that were presented earlier are new programs that is for consideration of the ministries and offices in their budget for 2022 and beyond.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, we are actually in the last leg of our committee deliberation. What would be the main author's prayer should we adopt this resolution? Do they intend for the budget that we prepared for 2022 be accommodating enough to consider the proposal of the proponents?
Proponent may answer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Foremost, at the outset, it would be better if those concerned ministries and offices have considered it in their proposed budget. But nonetheless, I know that the budgeting process have started as early as January and February, and therefore that option is no longer possible. But what can be done right now is if the government of the day decides to support this initiative, we can allot a portion of the contingent fund for the ministries and offices to take a peek of the programs and there are 50 programs and projects there that are applicable to their ministries and offices in support to the Halal ecosystem implementation.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I believe it was detailed by the speech of the main proponent, one of the main proponents, that they are praying that the process be also include in the budget preparation, getting to the stakeholders and welcoming inputs from them. And I believe that is the intention, really intention of this resolution. Granting, Mr. Speaker, that the Parliament approves this resolution, do we see probably a change in the budget cycle? Should we also open the budget deliberation for public consultation, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, may I answer?
The proponent may answer.
Ideally, and as I've stated earlier, there are provisions in the law that encourages the participation of the sectors, civil society organization that represents the communities. In this case, I guess this is a very good start for all of us to open the process. And actually, the minority bloc have just started the process through this halal ecosystem.
Okay. So I think my last question, Mr. Speaker, I want to get understand the gist of the resolution. Although I have said I laud the intention of this resolution. Granting, for example, that we adopt this resolution, and one of the main proponents mentioned about, I believe is that a saving, or she mentioned something about a surplus or a budget or a savings?
In our yearly appropriations, there's what we call contingent fund.
Contingent, okay. So, granting, Mr. Speaker, that this Parliament approves or adopts this resolution, do we see any attempt or any initiative from the main proponents that they would pursue filing for a supplemental budget, for example, in order that these programs, according to the resolution, be also accommodated in the next year's budget? Do we see that as a next level initiative from the proponent, should the Parliament decides to approve this or adopt this resolution, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker.
And so far as the preparation for the contingency fund is concerned, Mr. Speaker.
The proponent may answer, but this is a resolution.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
We mind that the one filed is not a bill, but a resolution. So
That
you
is
don't
correct.
fund a resolution.
That is correct, Mr.
You
Speaker.
only fund when there is a bill. But what the proponent suggests is just maybe it can be considered by the government of the day.
Yes, Mr. Speaker,
For
precisely, and maybe adapted by the ministries and offices as their regular
although
program.
Is this the
later
same
on.
that we referred study that we referred to MAPAR during the...
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
So
meaning to say, Mr.
yes,
Speaker.
please proceed.
Yes.
Proceed, MP Zia.
Apologies if I have a very basic understanding. That's why I'm asking a question, Mr. Speaker. So meaning to say, if we approve this resolution, there won't be any initiative from the proponents to pursue adopting these programs insofar as the preparation for the contingency fund is concerned. Just a simple
The
question.
proponent may answer.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, best case scenario is it will be part of the 2022 budget. Worst case scenario, Mr. Speaker, is for the ministries and offices to consider it as their program and project later on, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. That will be my last question. And
Thank you,
again,
DS Zia.
I commend the proponents for initiating this kind of process, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, the next in interpreters is Deputy Minister MP Attorney Usi Iribani Lorena, Mr. Speaker.
My mentor.
Yes.
Our mentor.
Your recognition is necessary, Mr. Speaker.
MP Jose Joe Lorena, Deputy Minister. Please proceed.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While I laud the intent of this resolution, but I am in the dark whether to join or vote on the matter because I have not received a copy of the proposed people's budget. If the members of the parliament given a copy of this people's budget on halal ecosystem?
Proponent may answer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We furnish a copy to the Secretariat, Mr. Speaker, for the consumption of the members of the Parliament, Mr.
The
Speaker.
Secretariat is directed to furnish the gentleman and all members of the Parliament a copy of that.
Yes, thank you. But until today, I have not received a copy because an halal ecosystem covers from financing to the last product distributed.
Yes.
And I know there is already some movement on Islamic financing, which was already organized by the Office of the Chief Minister. In fact, in our budget deliberation, it was testified that there is a committee organized to work on that. So looking into an ecosystem would definitely be looking into the relationship between financing, production, and distribution of halal foods. That is why I would look into it, because certain portion of the budget, people's budget, may require certain legislation. Particularly, I am looking into financing where banking is also required, Islamic banking. And you also look into Takaful Islam, which is an insurance. So I hope with this resolution, we will be appropriately be apprised of the people's budget on ecosystem, because I will be in the dark as to whether how we can support it when we really don't know what is the content of that particular people's budget.
If we have enough time, Mr. Speaker, we can do the presentation, Mr. Speaker.
Nonetheless,
But I know that we are running out of time. We are in the budget process right now, so Mr. Speakers. But I just send a copy to your messenger, the copy of the paper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And perhaps we can browse into it, and perhaps the sponsor can also identify specific legislation that is required by that people's budget, so that the government of the day can be guided appropriately. Because the government of that day may be at a loss as to the understanding of the ecosystem and what action to be done. Perhaps a recommendation on our policy, and at the same time, legislative enactment should already be covered in that legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That is just my brief interpellation.
I think to go into that, related to that, he's really referring to some legislative framework that should be established. As he mentioned, the General Banking Act, and even the framework for halal, legal framework, should also be established. Thank you very much. Majority Leader.
Yes, next of our interpellators is our legitimate Majority Floor Leader, Attorney Lanang Ali Jr., and after our Majority Floor Leader, MP Romy Saliga. May we please recognize, Mr. Speaker, the Majority Floor Leader as our interpellator, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Majority Leader to interpret
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
the wish.
Yes, may the proponent of this particular resolution yield to some clarificatory questions, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. To clear some doubts in the air, Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask the questions. Is it, when we say people's budget, is it synonymous to halal budget?
Mr. Speaker, when we say...
Because, Mr. Speaker, it has been repeatedly said in this resolution, halal, 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 halal. Ano po ang pinopromote nito? People's budget as a pareho ba ng halal budget, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, pag sinabi po nating people's budget, nanggaling po sa mga tao yung proposal, Mr. Speaker. At ang laman po ng proposal ay halal ecosystem programs, Mr. Speaker.
In line with that, Mr. Speaker, pag sinabi po natin halal ecosystem programs, synonymous po ba ito sa Sharia compliant budget or gano'n, kahalin tulad ng Mr. Speaker?
Ito po ay ang halal ecosystem po ay kagaya ng sinabi ko kanina, from production to Wait lang. From farming and manufacturing production to logistics and distribution, trade and market, consumption, and the institutional leverage, Mr. Speaker. So mula paggawa ng produkto hanggang doon sa paglabas na ng produkto, Mr. Speaker.
Ang ibig po bang sabihin, Mr. Speaker, dito sa mga programs na sinabi nila sa ecosystem na ito, hindi po ba ito napapaloob sa projects and programs ng ating government of the day? Ibig sabihin, wala po ba ito sa 12-point agenda ng ating Chief Minister, Mr. Speaker? Gusto ko lang po malaman.
Actually, yung halal po ay part siya ng 12-point agenda. Ang aming pong proposal ay lalagyan ng laman yung policy na yon sa pamamagitan ng mga programa. At meron pong inialay dito na 50 project na galing doon sa mga taong na-consult ng minority bloc.
Ang ibig pong sabihin, Mr. Speaker, ang itong ginawang research ng minority bloc, for the record, Mr. Speaker, ay gusto pong tulungan ang government of the day na enhance or pagandahin ang ating halal ecosystem sa ating programa.
Exactly, Mr. Speaker. Kaya po na tayo nandito ay dapat tayo magtulungan. At nakita po namin na ang potential ng halal industry sa Bangsamoro region ay napakalaki. Kung kaya't nag-focus po tayo sa isang aspeto na ito para matulungan yung government of the day. Kung hindi pa man nailatag yan, at least may alternatives yung government of the day na aming sinasangguning ini-offer ngayon sa inyo sa government of the day para makatulong, para ma-promote talaga natin at maging malaking industriya ang halal sa Bangsamoro region.
Sa makatuwid, Mr. Speaker, generally, ang budget ng Bangsamoro, yung government of the proposal ay generally halal. Pero ang gusto ng minority bloc ay yung mga details doon ay gawing mas halal din yung mga details. Ganun po ba yun?
Mr. Speaker, sa makatwid po, nung nag-hearing po kami ng budget ng mga ministries, we just found out that MTIT just proposed for the preparation of halal master plan. And what we're seeing is we have this document that can be a benchmark for whatever purposes you want to pursue later on. And this is the purpose of this proposed program.
So the purpose of this program is to support the halal initiative of the government of the day sa pamamagitan nitong research na ginawa ninyo, Mr. Speaker.
Exactly po, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, yun lang po, Mr. Speaker. Maraming salamat.
Majority Leader, MP Saliga.
Yes, next interpreter is MP Romy Saliga, Mr. Speaker.
MP Romeo Saliga is recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Majority Floor Leader. I just have some clarification with the proponent, if she's willing to respond, Mr. Speaker.
We are willing to respond.
First and foremost, I appreciated the effort in doing this people's budget. Some of the questions have already been raised by Attorney Joe Lorena on the copy of the people's budget. So I just received it now, though I have not yet studied it. With this, I think I just be clarified if this people's budget were not included in any of the programs of the ministry.
The way I see it, because this one is the proposed programs, the proposed projects here are interrelated. But what is contained in the proposals of the ministries and offices might not be necessarily the same context as what we have perceived in the paper. So, yung interrelationship ng mga programs and projects that are being proposed now by the ministries and offices may not directly hit the outcome that we want to have as far as halal ecosystem. Medyo sabog tayo when we talk about halal because there's no framework yet that we have adapted as far as the implementation of Halal ecosystem?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, because actually we are actually with this resolution, it seems you are proposing another framework for budgeting. And like maybe other groups later can also do the same and propose the same budget with what this resolution have done to the government of the day. Like for me, actually I can initiate the same activities, then came up with a budget that is, shall I call it also people's budget. So are we formulating a new budgeting framework, Mr. Speaker?
We are not necessarily formulating a new budgeting framework. First of all, well, quote unquote, we haven't established a framework for our budgeting, but we have a process right now being adapted through the MFBM. But as to the grid process framework, we haven't decided yet on what framework are we going to follow. Whether we have this people's budgeting process as part of our framework, it's not yet decided. But as to the processes of how we come up with the BEP, with the GAA or GAAB, we have established that already through our schedules being provided by the MFPN.
Yes, Mr.
In
Speaker.
other words, MP Romeo Saliga, they are proposing in a resolution, expression of sentiment, but it is not binding to the government of the day.
Exactly,
They may
Mr.
pick it up or they may not pick it up, but it's a big help. And the consultation result was submitted. They called it people's budget because it is through their consultation. But that doesn't mean the government of the day is duty bound to propose that, to accept or to budget that proposal.
Yes, thank you for that elaborated explanation, Mr. Speaker. Actually, I like this idea because truly not all the sentiments on the ground usually are captured in the budget of the different ministries. And we need some mechanism where those that were not included but found to be relevant, very important from the perspective of the committee should also find a way to be heard so that it may be included in our budgeting budget plan. That's thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Next. Are we done?
I think, Mr. Speaker, MP Musa Jamla.
Musa Jamla is recognized.
Yes.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Majority Pro Leader. This is only a manifestation as a co-author of the resolution because I need to say something that may not include me on the minority block. This being specifically prepared and submitted by the minority block. But I am not with the minority block because...
What is your question, please? What is
Mr.
the question?
Speaker,
What is the manifestation, please?
my manifestation, Mr. Speaker, is that being a co-author of the resolution, I would like to request the principal authors to furnish us a copy of the people's budget on Halal ecosystem in BARM, as requested by good MP Lorena.
It's submitted to the Secretariat, as I
Yes, Mr.
understand
Speaker.
earlier. So, Secretariat, please furnish the gentleman.
And for ready reference, Mr. Speaker, I just forwarded it to the BT8 matters chat.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Speaker, there being no other interpellators, I move to close the period of interpellation. and
Period
debate.
of interpellation is closed. There is a motion to close the period of interpellation. Is there any second? Duly seconded. Is there any objection? There being none, same is hereby approved.
I move to open the period of amendments.
There is a motion to open the period of amendments. Is there any second? Walang second.
I think, Mr. Speaker, that there will be no amendments. I move to close the period of amendments, Mr. Speaker.
There is a motion to close the period of amendments.
Second motion.
Second, duly seconded. Is there any objection? Chair hears none, same is hereby approved.
I move, Mr. Speaker, that
approve the resolution.
We approve resolution number 570.
570.
I move for the approval of 570, Mr. Speaker.
There is a motion to approve a resolution, proposed resolution number 570. Is there any second?
Second motion.
Is there any objection to the motion?
None.
None. The motion to approve the resolution is approved.
Mr. Speaker, in view of our ongoing deliberation of our budget, I move, Mr. Speaker, to suspend the session because there is a meeting
Until tomorrow.
Until tomorrow at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
1 or 2 o'clock? 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
There is a motion to suspend the session until tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Same is hereby granted.